All right, we are now going to convene our second meeting or a second discussion for the evening on hookah lounges. Again, for those of you who are walking in, I am Commissioner William McCurdy II, representing District D, which covers downtown, historic West Las Vegas, North Las Vegas, East Las Vegas. And it is an honor to be here with you this evening, and I am joined today by Commissioner Segerbloom, and he'll introduce himself. This is a conversation that I think is needed, is long overdue. In my office, we've received quite a few phone calls from folks who operate hookah lounges, just around some of the issues that they were incurring, and also some of the perceptions there are about hookah lounges. Today, this evening, we're going to have a discussion about them. We're going to hear from City of Las Vegas Business Licensing, as well as Clark County Business Licensing Department. I know that there are a lot of questions that you may have. This is the forum to ask all your questions. We want you to leave out of here very clear on what you need to move forward with your own individual endeavors. But I'll turn it over now to Commissioner Segerbloom.
Thank you, Will. As Will said, I'm a fellow county commissioner. I have District E, which is, for our purposes, south of Sahara. So commercial center and areas like that, East Las Vegas, are in my district. The reason this came up was we had a major shooting in commercial center and hookah lounge. And when we looked at it, we discovered a lot of things that weren't being regulated and monitored. And so we thought maybe we should try to do this. But then Commissioner McCurdy pointed out that a lot of times there's a lot of unintended consequences. So we don't want to make things so stiff or create hurdles in our existing businesses that are doing a good job and not having issues by trying to crack down on the bad actors. So the purpose of tonight, frankly, is to see what we can do and if we did it, what the harm's going to be. So please step forward and say, don't do this, don't do that, here's my issue, because that's what this is feedback. We're just trying to decide what we can do. But honestly, after that big shooting with like 13 people were shot, that was pretty scary. So we probably have to do something, but we want to do it in the most minimal way to prevent hurting existing honest businesses. And so we have two, you said we have two people from the business licensing.
Okay. Vince, I don't know who's coming up first, but I'll invite Jennifer up.
Thank you. Hello. Is that good? All right. Hello, my name is Jennifer Williford. I'm the assistant manager at Clark County Business License, and we have a short presentation for you today to help you better understand how the licensing process works for hookah at the county. First, it starts with our Title 30. This is the zoning code. So zoning, what it does is it makes it determines what is a proper location for a particular type of business. So in this case, for a hookah business, regardless of what type it's attached to, the zoning department will look to see if it's an appropriate place for that type of business. So per our Title 30, a hookah lounge means an establishment whose business operation, whether it's primary use or ancillary use, includes the smoking of tobacco or other substances from a communal, single, or multi-stem water pipe. So after it goes through the zoning process, people would be able to go to Clark County Business License to apply. Now, it might say, well, I looked for a hookah license and I didn't find it. The answer to that is that it's not really a license, it's a permit. So you could add the hookah onto any license that we have. To apply for a hookah permit, a business owner makes an appointment at our office to add this as a line of service to the existing business that they already have. And there's not a charge for a hookah permit either. It is ancillary service to the business that you already have. The process involved with it, though, like all other applications we have for a business license, is that the hookah permit's required to go through public safety inspections prior to being able to operate. This includes inspections from the zoning department, as I mentioned before, to ensure it's acceptable location based on land use. Also, there's required inspection from the fire department. If your location sells or serves food or drinks, then also there's going to be a required approval from the Southern Nevada Health District. I'm sorry, I just realized I wasn't moving my slides. All right, so on to some common types that you could add a hookah license onto. The first one is a retail store. Common thing around here, I think everyone knows is familiar with a retail store. So if it's a hookah business, in some instances, really the only product it might sell is the hookah itself, and sometimes some other ancillary products. It's important to note that this type of license does not allow for the sale or service of alcohol, live entertainment, the charging of admission fees, or the operation of a nightclub. It really is, in all purposes, a retail store. The next common one that a hookah get added onto is a restaurant. This is a space that is held out as a public place where hot, complete meals are prepared and cooked on the premise, ordered from and served by waiters or waitresses to tables or booths, providing a seating capacity of at least 50 people in a room separate from the kitchen. In this case, all the meals shall be selected and ordered by the customer from tables or booths and from a prepared menu at a stipulated price. Important to note in this case is that if you add a hookah onto a restaurant license, this still does not allow for the sale or service of alcohol, live entertainment, charging of admission fees, or the operation of a nightclub. And I put the code at the bottom for the restaurant. The next we have commonly is what's called a restaurant category 2. So in the previous example, I said that it had to be large enough for 50 people. So in the next one, it's a restaurant, common that we all know, held out as a public place where meals are prepared or cooked on the premise, ordered again by waiters or waitresses in a room separate from the kitchen. And in this case, they have to have seating for at least 12 people at tables, booths, or a counter. Again, this type of license does not allow for the sale or service of alcohol, live entertainment, the charging of admission fees, or the operation of a nightclub. Next, we're getting into the alcohol licenses that you can have a hookah attached to. So there is a retail beer and wine license, which permits the sale of beer and wine in open containers for consumption on the licensed premise only. This is for businesses licensed as billiard parlors, karaoke clubs, wine cellar businesses, and a restaurant, either a regular restaurant category 1 or category 2, as we spoke about earlier. This type of license does not allow for the sale or service of hard alcohol or the operation of a nightclub. Next is a service bar, which is ancillary to another type of license. But a service bar is a retail liquor license permitting the service of alcoholic liquor by the drink to customers by waiters or waitresses. A service bar license does not permit the service of drinks directly to customers at a bar or at a liquor service area, but is required anytime alcoholic beverages are served away from a bar. This is not a standalone license and is only issued in conjunction with a restaurant license or another liquor license. This type of license does not allow for bottle service or the operation of a nightclub. Next, a supper club, which may be a term that's unfamiliar to some people, but I'm going to give you an example of what you might think of as an Applebee's. Something like that would be a supper club. A common type of license to add hookah is what we call a supper club. This means a restaurant with a bar operation that may also have a lounge, conducting retail alcoholic liquor sales, but the restaurant operation is the main operation. The intent of this section is that the service of alcoholic liquor is merely ancillary to the meals offered by the supper club. Complete meals are to be served during all hours that the bar is open for business, and importantly, a cook, a food server, and a bartender must be on duty at all times. And the cook and the server have to be someone other than the bartender. In this case, a separate club is also required to serve full course meals, and they're supposed to sit a minimum of 50 people at one time. Applicants for a separate club during the application process must submit a written security plan to prevent minors from loitering on the licensed premises and to prevent the service and consumption of liquor by minors. So for this type of license, they're not allowed bottle service, the charging of admission fees, or the operation of a nightclub. But in this case, the owner is allowed to apply for live entertainment. Next, we have a tavern. In the county, this is a bar or lounge where alcoholic liquors are sold at retail by the drink to the general public. A tavern liquor license is the only category of liquor license that adult entertainment cabaret is eligible for. A restaurant may be operated on the same premise as the tavern. A tavern is not required to sell food. They can have live entertainment, they can charge admission fees, and they can operate as a nightclub. So you see, this is a big departure from the previous licenses that we spoke about. All of a sudden, this one's can. There's another type of tavern which has a restaurant component. A tavern restaurant is when it's advertised to be held out to the public, where hot meals are prepared. Which are ordered from tables or booths, providing seating for at least 25 people in a room separate from the kitchen. The stools at the bar, seats in the lounge, or outside the dining area are not included in this seating requirement. Prepackaged or prepared meals, which are merely reheated in a microwave oven, do not qualify for meals under this section. And the kitchen must be operated no less than 16 hours per day that the tavern is open for business to the public. Same with the tavern without a restaurant. This type of license does allow for entertainment, the charging of admission fees, and can operate as a nightclub. Next, we have a full-service liquor bar, which is a bar or lounge where alcoholic liquors are sold by the drink to the general public. In this case, gaming is not allowed. Full-service liquor bars are allowed within multi-use developments located in the H1 zone, typically what you would think of as the strip corridor. Admission for entry may be charged in a full-service liquor bar. Food service is permitted but not required. This type of license is similar to a tavern but does not allow for gaming. Last, I did want to provide an example of something, just to put it out there, that there are some things that a hookah is not able to be applied to. For example, a teenage dance hall or nightclub. And it's because in this case, you have to be 21 to smoke the hookah, and that wouldn't permit for the hours for a teenage dance club. So while I said it can be added to most licenses, I just wanted to make sure I put out that some licenses are actually not appropriate for hookah. That was my presentation for you today. Thank you.
Do
you want to do it now? Sure.
We're going to hear from this. City of Las Vegas, and then we'll take.
Yeah.
Also, so unincorporated Clark County really starts south of Sahara, right? And then you have the city of Las Vegas, and that is going to be north of Sahara, and then up west up to Rainbow in some areas. So you want to know jurisdictionally where you're operating. We don't have North Las Vegas business licensing with us here today, but city of Las Vegas and Clark County is here to present.
Okay. All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Marquise Shepard. I'm a business license technician with the city of Las Vegas. As a business license technician, I review business license applications, answer questions related to business licenses, do outreach and presentations like I'm doing today. I've been in this role for roughly 3.5 years, and today I'll be giving you a presentation about how to apply for a hookah lounge business license. Okay, so the Las Vegas Valley is broken up into different jurisdictions. So the city of Las Vegas is the bright yellow area on the map. Like the commissioner said, for the most part, anything north of Sahara is considered the city of Las Vegas, and then anything west of Decatur, all right? So one of the most important things to think about before you open up a hookah lounge and you sign a commercial lease is to make sure that the proper zoning for the address that you will potentially have the hookah lounge will allow you to operate there. And also, there are building issues that you need to consider before assigning a commercial lease. For instance, if you are taking over an existing space that used to be an office space and you want to operate a hookah lounge there, there may be issues with the building occupancy limits and the building occupancy types. So it's always best to do your due diligence, reach out to our zoning department just to confirm that your potential address is eligible for a hookah lounge. So I have a video that I'd like to show you. It's about knowing what you're signing before you sign your lease.
From getting your business license to inspections, you'll want to learn as much as possible before you dive into your new business. But don't forget about your commercial lease. Some business owners don't take the time to read the fine print, and they pay for it later. We have 5 tips for you to know before you sign. First, make sure the commercial property you're interested in is correctly zoned for the type of business you're proposing, and ask if it will require additional permit approvals. Second, does this property have adequate parking? You may not realize there are regulations surrounding the required number of parking spaces for some businesses. You'll want to make sure your future landlord is aware of your parking needs and it is identified in the lease. Also, ask yourself, is the building safe? Every building should have an inspection that deems the appropriateness of the business activity. Make sure the space you're interested in has a certificate of occupancy with an occupancy type that is suitable for your type of business. Next, make sure the space is a good fit for your business. Even small improvements can be costly and will more than likely be your responsibility. Also, make sure the lease spells out who is responsible for repairs. Finally, watch out for other costs besides your rent. Many commercial properties charge extra for common area maintenance and tax maintenance and insurance fees. These fees could add up quickly, especially for a business that's just getting off the ground. These are some of the reasons why it's vital you know before you sign. For more information on business licensing through the City of Las Vegas, please go to lasvegasnevada.gov/business.
Okay, so in the city's code, hookah lounges are classified as smoking lounges. And chapter 6.82 of our municipal code is related to hookah lounges. So we define a smoking lounge as a business which offers as its principal activity or primary activity a location and equipment for the consumption of tobacco products. And then tobacco products are defined on the 3rd bullet. So you found your location, you checked with our zoning department to see, to confirm that the location is eligible for a hookah lounge license. So now you are starting the process of obtaining the state registrations to apply. So the first step is registering with the Nevada Secretary of State. So their website is Silverflume. That's where you'll register your business as a LLC, a sole proprietorship, a corporation. The second step is then registering with the Nevada Department of Taxation. And the third step is registering your fictitious firm name with the county clerk. So a fictitious firm name is a DBA, or the name that you advertise to your customers as. So for instance, if I registered my name, Marquise Shepard, LLC, with the Secretary of State, and I'm operating a hookah lounge under the name Marquise's Hookah Lounge, Marquise's Hookah Lounge is considered a DBA, which I will need to register with the county clerk. Okay, so after you have your state registrations, then you have to submit your license, your business license application with the City of Las Vegas. So smoking lounges in the city, it's unlike the county, it's not a permit, it's a privileged business license, which means it requires a background investigation and a financial history investigation with the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. So how it works is you go to our website, we have a checklist that you complete for privileged business licenses, and then you call in to schedule an appointment because we accept privileged license applications by appointment only. At the time that you apply, Certain things that you'll need is the lease. On the lease, the permitted use has to be what you'll be doing at the location. So if you're operating a hookah lounge or a nightclub, or if you want to be serving beer and wine or full liquor, it has to be identified in the lease. Another thing is a floor plan, just a floor plan of the location, and also a security plan. In the security plan, you have to address things like how will you prevent minors from consuming hookah, how will you prevent minors from entering the establishment, how will you prevent your customers from consuming cannabis inside of a smoking lounge because it's not permitted. And that's not an exhaustive list of everything that we ask. It just gives you a general information of the things that we look for the application process. The license fees are roughly $1,300. We charge a $150 Metro investigation fee per principal. So that $1,300 is for one principal. If there are multiple owners, then you can just add an additional $150 to that price. In my experience, I learned that a lot of the hookah lounges, it's not their primary activity. And those that try to make it their primary activity, they end up having compliance issues. Because when you submit the application for a hookah lounge, if you don't have like a secondary or like a restaurant associated with it, alcohol license, or even a nightclub, some hookah lounges would try to operate as a nightclub, but if they don't have the appropriate license, they have to stay in compliance with just the hookah. Okay. So how long does it take to get a business license? So it takes roughly 30 days. So when you submit your application in person, if everything is complete, we'll accept the application, the applicable fees are paid, and then we will route your application to our zoning department. They'll have to sign off on your location. They'll have to approve your location in our system. Another component is a fire prevention review. We send someone out to do an inspection of the building just to make sure everything's up to fire code, make sure there's a certificate of occupancy and things of that nature. After they sign off in the system for their fire review, the application is then reviewed by our senior staff. They just review the whole application and make sure everything is included, all the appropriate documentation has been provided, and the appropriate approvals has been entered into our system, and then we'll issue a temporary license. So from the time the application is accepted to the time the temporary license is issued, takes roughly 30 days. Right, and then that concludes my presentation on hookah lounges.
All right, so what we would like to do now is go into the questions. This is a point where you ask any questions that you have on mind. You could offer up experiences, scenarios, anything that you could think about, potential ideas that you may have around hookah and hookah lounges and so forth. This is that time. So just raise your hand. Please speak from a mic so we can get it all recorded because we want to be able to come back to this.
Before we go too far, I was going to ask, I know she didn't cover in her presentation,
Jennifer.
What is the distance restrictions between taverns?
Distance.
Sure, between taverns, it's a 2,000-foot distance requirement.
I have a question first. So Commissioner Sickerbloom mentioned that there was that bad hookah lounge issue. So have you guys have any proposals about that? It seems like maybe you're thinking of going to a privilege license with a background check, or what are you guys thinking? Maybe that'll start the discussion about what's the pros and cons.
No, exactly. That's one of the questions is, do we raise the profile on this and require actual background checks to make sure there's no criminal elements and things like that, like for a gaming license. So that's one of the questions, is that if we did something like that, how does that adversely impact you, those kind of things.
Yeah, and just, I'm a business broker, so I have some experience just in general with hookah lounges and other things. I've learned that in some businesses, they'll go to the jurisdiction with the least amount of restrictions. So just keep that in mind, that if you restrict in one location, they may move to North Las Vegas, for example, or Henderson. It may not solve the problem, and it may actually reduce revenue for the general fund.
Yeah, correct. So, this town hall is really at the very nucleus of it is to number one, educate, inform about the different type of licenses that you can have when you're offering hookah at your establishments, but also to get any feedback from you as to your experiences if you currently operate a lounge, and how we can best assist you. The goal is to always encourage more creation of small business. But at the same time, we have a responsibility to provide public safety and so forth. So I know that Commissioner Sagerbloom, he had some considerations, and he actually, joined today to actually hear from the constituency once he heard that this meeting was happening, and I'm glad that he's here.
Vince, head of the building department, or building, business licensing, sorry.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Vince Keon. I'm the Director of Business License. Yeah, we just wanted to clarify the different types of liquor licenses and business models that hookah permits are applied to. I know it can get confusing between a supper club and what you can do at a service bar versus a retail beer and wine. But just to follow up on this gentleman's comment about privilege licenses. So if we were to move into, I guess, bringing hookah into a regulated license, many of our hookah establishments already in the unincorporated Clark County are already privileged licenses. So if you have a liquor license, you've already gone through that metro background suitability and the financial suitability. So it wouldn't have an additional suitability. I think the question is if you're just operating maybe let's say a restaurant or something that's a general license, and then you add hookah to it, then it becomes a regulated license that would have to go through those suitabilities.
Lounge that had the problem already had a privileged license, right?
Yeah, I believe it was unlicensed.
It was unlicensed.
Yes.
So
One of the ironies here is they didn't even have a license, and that's what we got in trouble. So whatever we established wouldn't have affected that particularly. But if we do start to tighten things up, then we can start looking at places and going back out and identifying to try to get people into the system. Because one of the things we find in the county is there's a lot of people out there doing different things. I've got an apartment complex that doesn't have a business license. Like, how do you rent a space if you don't have a business license?
Just real quick, so for the record, that was an unlicensed business. So I saw a lot of articles about it being a hookah license and a nightclub and that kind of stuff. It's really given a negative connotation. It was just a bad actor operating, in a Wild Wild West type of manner. It just so happened to have alcohol and hookah. So for the record, he was unlicensed. He just happened to have a business that had those things in there, but he was not a hookah lounge. He was not a nightclub or any of that stuff. So to me, that's very important for the record. The other thing is just making sure we have consistency, whether it's the city or the county. We know it's different zoning and that kind of stuff. I probably had a countless amount of conversations, and sometimes I just feel like, man, I'm starting from scratch every time I speak to a different person. Now, I've actually had the privilege of speaking to some of you, and I've gotten a lot of firm and consistent guidance, and I appreciate that. But I want to make sure that we just have more consistent experience when we're working with you guys.
Do we know, in answer to the question, do we know that other cities, do any of them require privilege license?
City of Las Vegas does.
City that does? Okay.
Hi, my question pertains to the Clark County Code for supper club licensing. I know in your presentation, the bullet point actually describes that there's no bottle service, but in the code, it's not implied that way. We're supposed to we're supposed to just imply that it says no bottle service, but it's actually not descriptive, and in black and white, no bottle service. So my suggestion would be to simplify the code to where what you don't want us to do is actually laid out in black and white so that we don't have to interpret anything amongst ourselves. And if it is defined in the code in black and white what we can and cannot do, if we ever run into a situation, I'm speaking from experience. I'm the owner of Crew Lounge Las Vegas, and we're currently closed because our liquor license was actually was not renewed. Our temporary liquor license was not renewed due to us doing bottle service. However, we never got our citation for bottle service, and we had undercovers in our establishment several times, and they never cited me for bottle service. So how are we, as the business owners, supposed to know that we're doing anything wrong if we're not cited for it?
Can I add to that? Just with the presentations that you guys were presenting, you guys said bottle service operations or nightclub operations. I think in the future you guys should detail that because that can mean anything. I mean, if it goes from nightclubs on the strip, from nightclubs in Henderson or nightclubs in downtown or the art district, whatever the case may be, nightclub operations can mean a million things. So if you guys can just detail that out, then it won't be confusion as well.
In response to that, do either of you know, are you in the county?
Clark County.
Does it not say specifically bottle service?
Yeah, it's retail by the drink. I mean, like you said, it could be confusing. That's why we're here. But as far as the supper club's concerned, we also have a 50-50 ratio from food to alcohol sales.
Yeah, that wasn't the issue. The bottle service was cited as the issue. But as I stated, we were never given a citation for bottle service. And we had undercovers there plenty of times. They had opportunity to let us know that, give us a citation for it on paper so that we know that it's an issue. So I think that making sure that you guys, if there's an issue, let us know, because I'm definitely an owner where I make sure I had every permit, every license by the book. I ran my business very strategic. I didn't want any issues, coming to Las Vegas. I'm originally from Atlanta. So you gotta let us know that this is an issue and you guys, could potentially have your license taken from it. The 50-50 ratio wasn't a problem in my business. We did great food sales. And then my other thing was, how do you guys define a nightclub? Because at my previous hearing, I kept hearing representatives say that we look like a nightclub, we present ourselves like a nightclub, but my definition of a nightclub is not the establishment that I was running. So I think it should be clearly defined what you guys perceive as a nightclub and what our business vision is, because like I said, where I'm from, my business was a hookah lounge, and what's defined by the representatives at Clark County is that my business was ran as a nightclub. So who defines if the business is a nightclub or if it's actually a hookah lounge?
Okay. We do have a definition of a nightclub, but yeah, it should be more explicit in the code and maybe specific into each category, whether it's a service bar, supper club, cannot operate as a nightclub, and then maybe outline what is a nightclub. You cannot charge admission fees instead of, because I know in the supper club it does state that you can't charge admission fees. Restaurant has to be the primary service, and it talks about the bar lounge and all that. But maybe if we outline the actual nightclub portion of it and detail that, it'll probably help.
So where are you in the process? License suspended? Is it terminated?
My temporary license was not renewed, and I'm still in the suitability check investigation for a permanent liquor license. I originally applied for a liquor license in Clark County back in October of 2021, and it's August of 2022. So it's been a very long process.
Yeah, and I don't want to speak to your specific license in this forum. I don't think that's appropriate, but I mean, yeah, we're definitely here and available. I'm willing to meet with you, and we can discuss where you are in the licensing process, and maybe if we can try to mitigate some of the issues or work something out.
But in Clark County, we actually isn't a hookah license, right? It has to be tied to
Right. So unlike the city of Las Vegas, hookah for Clark County is just a permit. So it's usually ancillary to some other type of business. And I thought that, it was important for us to just lay out all the business models that we've seen hookah apply to, such as the retail store, the restaurant with alcohol, supper club, and I know there's a lot of confusion. So actually, we're going to have our agents, also our licensing agents, when someone applies even for supper club license and it has hookah attached, that they can go over what that hookah permit is actually for.
Because the tavern license actually kind of has the same verbiage as the supper club license. It doesn't really indicate anything about bottle service in the tavern license either. So even if you read the tavern license, the actual code, you wouldn't know anything about bottle service, where you can do it or you can't do it. It's like we're supposed to interpret and imply it, but it should just be written in black and white what the business can and cannot do to avoid, potential costly mistakes.
No,
I think that's my suggestion.
thank you.
I was just going to add that it sounds like the only thing you can't combine a hookah lounge with is a dispensary license.
Okay. Good evening. My question is, what type of business license do you need to add to, or what type of business license do you need to apply for to get a hookah permit added for a mobile hookah business? And by mobile, I mean a business that is not a brick and mortar, but provides hookah vending services to multiple locations.
So in the city of Las Vegas, because it's a privileged license, it's a site-specific license. So if you make an agreement with an establishment to provide hookah services at their establishment, you'll have to apply for a business license for that location. If you're only just providing the actual equipment and your employees aren't serving the hookah, then you will need a rental license, and the establishment will need the privileged hookah license.
So just to be clear, you cannot provide hookah services to a multitude of locations. You only can do it to one location.
If you could do it in multiple locations, but you'll have to have a license for each location if it's within the city.
Okay.
I guess I just need clarification. So when you're saying you're doing hookah in different locations, are you just providing the equipment, or are you actually having, let's say, like a special event? I just didn't know what part of your business is for those particular locations, and what type of locations are we talking about?
It's basically I'm providing the full hookah service, as in the equipment, the tobacco, all the accessories, and the setup for private or public events.
Do you know the answer to that?
I think it probably, like he said, probably be like a retail type license, because you're making a gross revenue off of those sales.
Hi, my name is Drew Renter. I'm an assistant manager with business license, and for a hookah lounge or for hookah, a hookah permit requires inspection by the fire department. So you wouldn't really be able to do it because you have to be inspected by the fire department everywhere you go. So to be mobile would somewhat be impossible, in the county at least. Food trucks are regulated as well, but you can have a food truck, but you can't have hookah.
But I mean, you could probably contract out with multiple locations and have those, let's say you contract out with 5 locations, then you get those locations inspected, then I could see that happening.
Okay. All right.
Hold on one second.
Business license section manager for the city of Las Vegas. In the city of Las Vegas, if you are an establishment, a hookah establishment, and you want to participate at a festival in the city of Las Vegas or at a convention, you may be able to be a vendor, a service provider for hookah at those permitted events, if you have an establishment license in the city of Las Vegas. So we do have somewhat that mobile component as well.
All right. Go. Good evening.
Um, we've been in the business of hookah lounges per se for the past 10 years, and 10 years ago we didn't have the opportunity that we have, and I thank you for that. Um, I can speak on behalf of some of my colleagues that are not here that have been operating in this field for a long time, that just to confirm our friend's comment, is when an establishment provides a service that they're not licensed for, and then within the media it's pertained as there are hookah lounge where they're not, and they violate multiple violations, and it will become a burden on us as folks that we try to go by the laws and by the book and have a honest and respectable business. Um, the few things, these are just the recommendations on my end and my partner's end that we think could help hookah lounges and the business, because we are coming from a culture of hookah. This is our culture. This is a cultural thing for us. It's very dear to our heart, but we do understand that it comes with some burden sometimes, especially if it's mixed with liquor or anything like that. We do recommend, most of our friends, I believe they do that, to have significant security, whether at the door or inside the establishments, maybe the background check on all the owners. I know it's not a privileged license, but you could have a restaurant and a bar and just apply for a hookah license 5 years later, and maybe things have changed. I would recommend that instead of putting a lot of pressure on them, whether, okay, you're this type of a liquor license or that type of a liquor license. I think the main concern that we're here today is the incident that happened, and maybe a couple of other minor incidents that happened in town. And I think those fall under the management part of it, where how could someone get a lease at a place with no proper licensing? Do we make landlords responsible for licensing hookah lounges? If you're licensing to a person that does a business that they're not supposed to, what are the laws permitting weapons inside a lounge like that? I know that it's business by business and zoning, and whether city or county. I think a lot of it would be on the safety aspect of the business compared to whether you serve liquor or you don't. You could have no liquor at a business and you could serve a hookah, but if the proper security measures are not taken, you still have incidents and accidents. I do believe that that should be a focus for all of us as a community, because we all support each other, we all try to help each other. And just another question. I wasn't clear on that hookah catering aspect. So if I own a business that serves hookah and we're licensed and can I go to another restaurant and serve hookahs there at that restaurant? The owner should be getting a license under that name, correct?
So if you have an establishment and you have a hookah license, you can serve your hookah at special events, but if you go to a different establishment and want to serve your hookah there, that's not allowed. It'd have to be at a special event.
I got you.
Oh, but he had stated at first that you could get a license to service that restaurant. We have a couple different operators where they go to the lounge part of the bar and provide that service. And they get a site-specific license for that restaurant, separate, their own establishment for the hookah, because it's their staff. But otherwise, as Marquise explained, the establishment can be licensed and they can just rent your equipment or contract with your staff. In the city of Las Vegas, they have to have special work carts to serve hookah as well. Okay. Sheriff's carts, if you're not familiar with those.
Thank you.
So my question is, with hookah lounges, I'm currently in the process of opening one, and what I've found out is there's a lot of new hurdles that no one tells you about, in terms of air ventilation calculations, new things that I've never heard of. I've been in the hookah industry for over 10 years. I've opened up multiple locations for people, and after going through a use permit because of the zoning and being granted the hookah license, I start to run into issues with county that no one notifies you about until you start going through the inspection portion. And I think that's something that needs to be clarified because when you open up a hookah lounge, you're under the assumption if you go through zoning, zoning approves you. If you have to go through a use permit, like I did, that was all taken care of. And then when I get down to an occupancy issue, they start digging deeper into the location and finding out issues that that building had that I've worked on taking care of, but it's been 8 months and I cannot get an approval to open. And no, there's nothing clearly out there that says, hey, your ventilation needs to be this X amount, because they categorize it as a smoking lounge. But if you go through the mechanical licensing book, there's no physical numbers that show you what the calculation needs to be. And I hired an engineer, and the engineer had a problem. So if it's that hard for him to get this resolved, for us, it's more difficult. And I think that there should be a clearly stated outline, hey, hookah lounges are allowed in Clark County in a C2 only. If you go through a special use and you get approved, you can continue that way. But if there's new regulations on ventilation, if there's a certain amount of CFMs that are required, that stuff should be, something that we should know prior to signing a lease and getting ourselves into a 10-year contract, and 8 months down the road, I'm still not open. And then also to address another question that I had was, in the retail beer license, so I've heard multiple things from multiple different people in the county in terms of what's classified under retail beer and wine. They say that it's a certain percent of alcohol and below that you can serve that's not hard liquor. Is that true, or is that something that I'm just hearing multiple things about?
No, so liquor, hard liquor, our definition is 17% or 34 proof. So if you have a retail beer and wine or a packaged beer and wine, it has to be less than that. Less than 17% or 34 proof.
So any of those mixed cocktails under the retail beer and wine that are under 17 and under 35 proof, we're allowed to serve under retail beer and wine? Because that's a big confusion that's out there with multiple locations.
So I guess just to clarify, when you're saying the mixed cocktail, who's mixing it? Is this like pre-packaged?
Yes, pre-packaged.
Because so at a package store, I've seen some of those ready-made margaritas that are under 17% or 34 proof, and that's fine. But I guess the concern would be is if a staff member or a bartender or one of the personnel at the retail beer and wine location is mixing it, and then it would be hard to distinguish if it's actually less than 17%. But if you're saying it's one of those pre-made, pre-packaged, correct me if I'm wrong, that should be fine. No, we're talking about a retail beer and wine. So if it's a restaurant with a retail beer and wine license, he's saying he wants to serve those same type of beverages that are already pre-made, like the margarita mix, or I don't know the different hard ciders that are already pre-made. That's what you're talking about, right?
Yes.
So instead of selling a bottle of beer.
Yeah, like the Coke and rum. You can order it from Southern Wine that's already mixed in a can, and that's under 17%. But some people say you can't. Some people say you can. What's the outline on that?
I'll let Jennifer. She's in charge of liquor licensing, so.
Right. I mean, really the concern would be if you were getting bottles of hard liquor and mixing drinks from there. But if the drinks were already starting at below 17%, that'd be okay.
Yeah, that first issue, I mean, that's more of a zoning, building, fire prevention question or concern. I guess my question is right now, are you talking about the inspection after you go through the use, and then you're just going for the business license, and then there's business license inspections also? So are you talking about pre-business license where you're just trying to get the use permit and trying to get that building?
So I've already been granted the use permit. My hookah license has been issued. but my restaurant license hasn't been issued, and my retail beer and wine has not been issued. And that's due to health department has to come out prior to licensing issuing me those. But I'm running into all the hurdles of a hookah lounge because they're bringing up all these things at the end. So no one clearly stated, hey, you got these things you have to cover, and building doesn't say anything about that. It's a surprise.
So this is more, so you already have a pending business license, so these are part of the business license inspections. So yeah, no, I'll definitely reach out if it's building, fire, and definitely the health department who we work with if you have food, so.
Yeah, the health department they clearly stated once you're approved that they'll come out and do their inspection. So they're not really holding me up, but like I said, it's the building department for the licensing that's holding me up.
So you're saying we probably need like a one-pager outlining all of the rules and regulations per agency for hookah? Is
Yeah,
probably what
because
we need.
it's hookah's the one that's consistently driving new concerns. So, you know, and it brings up to another question like, in a hookah lounge, you can't smoke cigarettes or vape under a restaurant license. So, as a restaurant license as your primary, you can't smoke cigarettes or vapes, but you can smoke hookah.
Yeah, that must be a health district regulation. It's definitely not in business license, right? Did you have a question?
Good evening, panel. So although my partner and I were, we were able to get everything in process and it was acceptable and we passed all the things we needed, just waiting on business inspection. What I am concerned about, though, safety issue. So what is the safe distance a person needs to be away from the establishment should something happen and they came out of my establishment? Because I don't want to be held liable and or get business suspension because they left out of my establishment. Just like taverns, you can't really control that, and taverns get to stay open if they're a certain distance away from the building. So, what precautions or what steps we need to take for that?
You'd be responsible for the business premises, including the parking lot.
Okay. The
I don't know if
the property that I'm
different-
aligned in, there's several businesses that are attached to that. So how do you specifically say that you are responsible when I got a dance studio next to me, I got a catering studio next to me, I got a barber shop next to me? How do you judge as opposed to what's really going on? So any one of them could be responsible for that, and then I get suspended just because I'm a hookah lounge restaurant. You know what I mean? You just pinpoint. So how do you not pinpoint and I get to keep my license?
I think be situational. Lots of times we depend on Metro to write those reports that give us what times things happened, what businesses were open at the time, where did the situation stem from, because they're getting the calls for service and, the people are, identifying a certain business during those calls for service.
But there's really no safe zone. That's what you're saying. There's really no safe zone. That means, they could be 500 yards, 200 yards. How far away do they need to be from me? I can't stop somebody if they get a half block down the light and decide they want to act stupid. Yeah, actually it was. That's why I'm asking this question. So there needs to be clarity so that we have a safety net. Because then we lose our license, then we gotta, find something else to do with our life.
So typically you're responsible for the business in the parking lot. Anything that, I guess there's any situational thing that.
Even if it's considered public parking?
Yeah, I don't know that we could say that it's 200 feet, that it's 300 feet, because there's just a lot of situations that could happen.
Yeah, I talk with the building owner. I can't have, for better lack of word, segregated spot because it's used for everybody that's in the complex. It's a bank there. Again, it's 2 other restaurants, a massage parlor. There are multiple businesses, so I can't have a specific parking spot. They could park at any one of these zones that's in there. And again, It still don't really tell me if I'm okay.
There's no safe zone, but I mean, a lot of it's case by case. It depends on the type of incidents you're talking about. Are we talking about a homicide or just people loitering and
I mean, for
drinking
me,
in
it's
the
just
park?
hypothetical. I just need to know
Yeah,
what's
so it's case by case, but we're not going to just go by, calls for service just for that address because, usually when there's a call for service, it's just tied to that address and then it's never tied to a specific suite. So it just depends on what the issue is. If it's let's say there's multiple liquor licenses or restaurants in that strip mall, and there's issues with maybe drinking or fighting in the parking lot, I mean, we would definitely investigate and see, go back. I don't know. I'm just making up hypotheticals, a year or 6 months, and see. Okay, business A always has people coming out at this time and drinking in the parking lot, whereas B, C, and D don't. So no, we definitely do our due diligence before taking any enforcement action.
So how do I be able to operate the restaurant and keep it going should something happen in the hookah side lounge of it? Like, what do I need to do to be able to still operate? Because the kitchen shouldn't be affected by that. Because if all we pushing out is food, that's really what it is. There's nothing going on in the kitchen but food. So how does the kitchen be affected? If you get what I'm saying, I would like to keep the kitchen open should something happen.
Are you in the county or city?
Is it county?
County. Is this like a specific? Are you talking about like a real issue?
That could
right
be a
now?
real life issue. Yeah,
I
like
mean, if it's something that's pertaining to your license that you want to discuss, then we could talk offline, not in this forum. And,
cool.
But yeah, no, I totally understand. I mean, I get what you're saying. So if you remove, let's say you're having issues with the whole establishment, and I don't know, maybe it was identified that the hookah was the issue. You're saying, can I remove the hookah and keep the restaurant?
Yeah.
Okay.
Last question. Make it quick. So, what was it? Oh my God. It was important too, but I needed to know safety first. That's crazy, right? One trumped the other.
We can phone a friend.
You know what? I'd like to.
We can come back to you though.
No, okay, no, I got it. So my off hours, from what I was approved for, I'd like to offer catering during the day. Is there a specific license that I need to do, or do I do something with the health department for that to be able to operate the establishment during the day? Nobody's in. I'm just like doing corporate catering or something.
Yeah, we do have a catering license that you can obtain. It's a general license and
General license?
yeah.
Okay.
So you have to have so you have a restaurant license already. Just want to add
Yeah.
catering. Yeah.
And just want to add catering. Do I have to wait on any long process or anything? Does that uphold me from being able to open, or that's something that can be in the work down the line?
I'll let Jennifer. I don't want to commit to anything because I'll say it's quick, but let Jennifer.
Even though you have the existing business, all of the public safeties would need to go through again. So it'd still have to go through zoning, the fire department, the health department, because there is food involved. So it would have to go through that whole process again. But it is a general license, so it's not something that would take as long as a privilege license would, because there's no suitability or anything involved in that.
So,
I believe we're already asking for security plans currently. So I think the question maybe is if there's anyone would have an issue with any hookah license being regulated, which means going through a metro background investigation and financial suitability. But like many of you here already have a liquor license, so that wouldn't even apply to you.
So in the city, as part of the hookah lounge application, you're required to submit a security plan, and we approve the security plan before the license is issued.
Hi. My question is pertaining to
Oh.
the first. Sorry, somebody else. Oh, my question is on the first presentation. I just wanted to get some distinctive differences between a full-service liquor bar and a restaurant, full-service restaurant with a full-service bar. And it's a second part to that question as well after you get the first one.
Can you repeat that? Are you saying full-service liquor bar?
So I see here full-service liquor bar, which is like the one that we have at Town Square, and we also have a full-service restaurant with full-service bar or a lounge.
Okay, so I'm with you. The full-service liquor bar, what's the difference between having that and a lounge?
And a full-service restaurant with full-service bar.
Oh, sure. The full-service liquor bar is only in the H1 zone. So, and it's more what you would expect for establishments that are located on the strip, which would be different than if it's not in the H1 zone. You wouldn't be able to get that full-service liquor bar then.
Okay, so for full-service restaurant, they're saying that you have to have a supper club, right? You have to have if you have a full-service restaurant. Okay, I'm looking at the NAICS code 722511. We say full-service restaurant with a full-service bar. So technically, you have to have at least 50 people in a separate section of the bar or lounge, and you're eligible to get a supper club license. So technically, I have to first have a full-service liquor bar to get a supper club. So I'm kind of confused because in your slide, you were saying that a full-service liquor bar can charge at admissions, but for a supper club, you can't charge. So I'm just trying to understand because we used to have a full-service bar before, and we kind of got shut down for 3 months. And we came back and we got a supper club. So we got both of them, which we practically pay every 3 months. I think we pay $600. So I just want to understand, do I have both licenses or it's just one?
So a full-service bar is only like she said in a H1, like a retail or a regional commercial center.
Mm-hmm.
So you're talking like Town Square, downtown Summerlin, Fashion Show Mall. Now, I don't know which one you're referring to, but a supper club is basically a restaurant with a bar operation. So the restaurant portion, that's where the food is. You can't just drink at the restaurant portion. Yeah, all the alcohol must be served with meals, and but that also has a bar lounge area. So there, you can just drink. You don't have to have that food component, but it has to be separated. So sometimes, and then that requires, I believe, I think it's a category 1. It's more than 50 seats. But for that particular one, you could just have a supper club, and not have the supper club liquor portion of it.
Asking about charging admission fee, right?
Right.
No, you can't do that with a supper club.
They have the full bar licenses.
Yeah, they meet the definition of a regional commercial mall or something. Yeah.
All right, any other questions?
So my question was, how do we work with the business department to kind of work on that stigma that is associated with hookah lounges because of someone's past mistakes? Because we went through all the proper channels, like the inspections prior to, security in front of our establishment, everything that needs to be done. Besides that one hiccup, which she may clarify that was it very not black and white, it was kind of in a gray area. So how do we work to associate with the business department so that just because y'all see hookah, y'all just like, okay, no, and if there's violence, 2,000 feet away, it's associated with that hookah place because there's hookah there. How do we work to get rid of that stigma?
Security we have on the outside of our premises, because I was specifically told the nightclub when you have more
my question.
So okay, so that's a catch-22. I think where we can be helpful within the various roles that we occupy here is helping to build a relationship with whoever's area command that is, so that if something happens, you have the assurance of knowing that it's not isolated. You've notified somebody, now you got a card of a contact person you can reach out to within the area command, and that way you kind of have your bases covered. So that's something that we can work with depending on where your business is to connect you with whoever the area command watch commander is in that area. But it is a catch-22, but it's better to notify somebody that you're probably having problems when it first starts off. Yeah, yeah. So another goal of this town hall today is to start building relationships with you. Because if you don't know that you have somebody that you can come to, whether we're in the city municipality or here in Clark County, then you kind of feel like you're isolated and left alone. So in many ways, this is more so a dress rehearsal for our introduction to one another, to know that you have support and to know that we want your business to survive, we want it to thrive, and we want you to do well. And that's why it's more so educational, informational, but also seeing how we can help you move along with the various hurdles that you have.
Pretty much here because hookah is growing. That's why everybody's here. And so that's the problem when you just nip it in the bud. Hookah is growing big. It's still I apologize, but it's still going to have its issues like any other spot. You get some bad apples, you don't. But we're affected because the name hookah is attached to it. Some of us are going to regulate, and I have to speak just coming into it, but just by watching, some of us is going to regulate the alcohol and do the necessary things we need to do to have a safe zone. But in an overall, it's figuring out how we can still have our hookah lounge, how we can get along with you all, how you all can communicate with us, so that we don't keep going through the hassle of having to have a hiccup every time something goes on, and then we're not targeted just because we're a hookah lounge outside of the strip. So that's why we're here.
And the goal is,
let's make that clear.
I was going to say, that's why we wanted to have you come here too, because in answer to your question, how can we improve the image? Part of this can be if we could come up with some type of a improved regulation, then we can go to the public and say, look, we've heard the problems, we've seen the problems, we've addressed them, we've regulated this, we brought everything under the same umbrella, we haven't hurt the industry, but we want you to know that we understand that there's been a problem and we're addressing it. And the fact is, this is a very thriving, successful business that we want to do better, like everything else we do in Las Vegas. So we don't want to hurt you, but we want to show the public that we have heard them and we've taken some small steps.
and also to make sure that this industry isn't disproportionately targeted. That's the lens that I come from. I'm wanting to make sure that we have equity and parity among the various regulations and so forth that are put in place. So that's another goal of this.
Can I add to the comment of the safety one, because coming from a software security person, can we collaborate with Metro guys to come over, give a surprise visit, some hours, see outside public area if everything is all right, and then can we collaborate with Metro, and can they come over and give a surprise visit to see what's going on in the public areas? and have the security cameras. See, the ring has the collaboration with a lot of metros. Can we have some kind of security cameras connected to the cops area for the outside purpose?
Yeah, we could definitely connect you with the area command, and
Yeah.
maybe you can meet your COP,
Yeah,
community
and then recommend something.
policing.
Yeah, okay.
I'm good. I might take a burger home.
And second question is, can we upgrade from Supper Club to Tavern for the license?
You can if you meet the distance requirements.
Okay, requirements. Okay, thank you.
All right, so we have time for just a few more questions. We're supposed to end at 8, but the conversation is good, so I guess we'll, get the last couple of questions in as we look to wrap things up.
One, I want to thank you guys for having this forum. It was definitely needed. My question is, when the situation happened in Commercial Square, there was, I believe, an adverse reaction that caused several, especially black-owned lounges that had hookah to be closed. I believe it was targeting, but there hasn't been much conversation around the metro going to minority, or I'm going to specifically say black-owned establishments that were closed. Is there any data that's going to show when that happened, the ones that were closed, who they were? Because if we're not collecting that, then all we're knowing is black and brown places are being closed for something that really was not a hookah problem because it wasn't a licensed hookah business. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense.
But you kind of took the words out of my mouth as I was about to ask about the, targeting and the lack of equity when it comes to how they're being treated. And so my question is, when we have establishments that open, if there can be some one sheet that describes thoroughly to entrepreneurs, because what I'm hearing constantly is the lack of information and knowledge of exactly what's needed to be able to operate within the parameters and within the permits. Seem like there's a lack of it, so people are being targeted. And whenever you don't want these places to be open, Metro comes and finds different things, and without giving a citation, they'll just get you closed down. And all that money has been lost, jobs have been lost, and it has a huge effect on our local economy. Thank you.
What's going on, everybody? Just real quick, just a quick comment. I know this was alluded to by the gentleman here. I know Sue also brought this up, and I've also discussed a similar issue here with a tick earlier about the liabilities with the distance. I know there's oftentimes incidents that take place very far from the actual hookah lounge or the establishment, and there's one that I can confirm where an incident took place a mile away. And then this individual lost his license because of this specific incident. So I think that when we are creating policies and regulations that are going to be creating some oversight over these lounges, we should actually consider the distance from the actual location itself. That should be paramount to this conversation.
Thank you, Assemblyman Ruben De Silva. And I also want to recognize Assemblyman C.H. Miller, Cameron Miller, for joining us, as well as Chief of Staff to Congressman Horsford, Asha Jones, Queen Jones, for joining us as well.
One last thing. Again, thank all of you for the information. It's very helpful. I want to know, are we going to have any ongoing regular meetings, or what are the follow-ups and next steps? Because this is only the beginning.
So the follow-up to this is probably going to be something like a monthly roundtable that we're going to do. We have quite a few that we do in Commission District D, but this is probably going to be something that's going to need to go on and on until we can make sure we get everything situated. So make sure you put down your emails, and if you didn't put it down, Junior, raise your hand in the back. He's going to make sure you have, and we're going to communicate with you as we progress with this conversation.
And if we do propose something,
One last question. Have any of you personally experienced hookah? I'm just curious. That's all. Meeting adjourned.
That wasn't a joke.
One last question, if you don't mind. I want to talk about the music when it's based off of a supper club license. When it comes to the music being heard from outside the club, there's no decibel level or anything when it comes to that. And it's based off of someone's perception. If the business license department come out and they hear the music from the outside, they could write you a citation, but it's no decibel level that's in the code that we should follow. So I want to just ask you guys about that.
Are you referring to city or county?
County.
I believe there is, but it's definitely not business license that goes out. That would be building and I think code enforcement, right?
It says that the music can't be heard
Just audible from the outside.
premises. If the door opens from the premises, then you may hear the music.
Oh, it's in the zoning.
And
Yeah.
the business license did write us the ticket for that.
Yeah, so that comes from the zoning department. It's part of your special use permit that they say the music can't be audible from the outside. So you're right, they don't put a definition of what that is, but if it's audible to Metro or one of our agents, then that is a citable thing.
It just goes back to the point of like you guys not being willing to like work with us. It's not a pull and tug. It's just more so citation, citation, close the business. It's not like a two-way street. It's like you guys are bullying the small business.
Right, but it really impacts the community, and so sometimes there might be complaints that are coming from those around. So it's we're all in it together.
We actually installed decibel meters outside of our business just to make sure that our music was not bothering anyone around the area. But again, there's no decibel point like in other cities. There's actual decibel point in the code so that your business doesn't go over a certain level. But Clark County doesn't have a decibel point. But I still install meters outside the business just to ensure that we're in a a safe range, so to speak. But it's still up to, of course, the person's perception, and that goes back to just the hookah lounge stigma. That people can make a complaint even though they don't hear anything. They just know that it's a hookah lounge. So it's kind of hard to define whether or not it's an actual complaint if
When it's substantiated. Mhm.
These things are very subjective. The Metro they can come in.
So the meeting is going to be with our office once a month. We typically have different folks come around from the county departments, but I am committing to continue the conversation, working, with our county team, as well as, relaying information that we hear from the county to the city, so that we move forward, in a unified front in many ways to just make sure that your businesses continue to thrive. That's the goal. And that's why we want to have this conversation this evening so that we can hear from you, you hear from us, what the rules and regulations are currently, and also hear, about what is currently being considered in terms of, maybe tightening things up, but also making the industry just better. So that's my commitment. So
Heard you, but it's an ongoing conversation.
all right. So with no other questions, we just want to thank you for coming out, travel home safely, and again, thank you for your time.